The needle trembled in Nina Whitmore's hand as she stared at the medication bottle. The label said 1 milligram. The pills inside were 3. Someone in this mansion was trying to murder Alexander Romano, and she had less than 10 minutes to decide whether to save the most dangerous man in the city or let him die in his own bed. If you're enjoying emotional stories like this one, please subscribe to the channel and stay with me until the very end. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels tonight. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 2 in the morning, and Nina Whitmore had not slept in 31 hours. She stood at the foot of the 4-poster bed, gripping the edge of the mattress with white knuckles, watching the man beneath the silk sheets shiver as if he were freezing to death in the middle of August. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead. His lips usually pressed into that hard, unreadable line that made grown men step backward when he entered a room were now cracked and pale. Alexander Romano, 42 years old, 6 feet 2 inches of controlled menace. The man whose name was whispered in 3 languages across the eastern seaboard, and tonight he looked like a child. "Mr. Romano," Nina said softly, leaning closer. "Sir, can you hear me?" He didn't answer. He hadn't answered in almost 4 hours. She pressed the back of her hand against his forehead and almost flinched. 104.2. She checked it 10 minutes ago. It had been 103.8 then. The fever was climbing, and it was climbing faster than it should have been. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, fight this." A floorboard creaked behind her, and Nina spun around so quickly her braid whipped against her shoulder. Marcus Hale stood in the doorway. The lawyer, Alexander's right hand for the last 15 years. He was still wearing the same charcoal suit he'd worn to the meeting that afternoon, though the tie was loosened now and his collar was unbuttoned. "How is he?" Marcus asked. "The fever's higher." "How much higher?" 104. Marcus stepped into the room and closed the door behind him with that particular gentleness men use when they're trying very hard not to seem nervous. He walked to the side of the bed and looked down at the man he'd built half his career protecting. "Did Dr. Castellano leave instructions?" "Yes." "And you've been following them?" Nina hesitated. It was just a half-second pause, but Marcus caught it. His eyes lifted from Alexander's face to hers, and for a moment Nina felt as if a flashlight had been pointed directly at her chest. "I've been following them," she said. "Good." He looked back down at the bed. "Get some rest, Nina. I'll sit with him." "No, sir." The word came out before she could think about it, and as soon as it did, she felt the heat rush up her throat to her cheeks. "You did not say no to Marcus Hale." Nobody said no to Marcus Hale. Even the men who carried guns for a living spoke to him in measured, careful sentences. Marcus turned his head slowly. "Excuse me. I mean, forgive me, sir. What I meant is I'd prefer to stay. I know his schedule. I know when he last ate, when he last had water, when he had his last dose. If something changes, I'll catch it faster than someone coming in cold." There was a long silence. The grandfather clock ticked. Outside, a hard rain began to drum against the window. "That's loyalty," Marcus said quietly. "Where did you learn loyalty like that, Nina?" "From watching him, sir." The answer surprised her almost as much as it seemed to surprise Marcus. She hadn't planned to say it. It had simply walked out of her mouth on its own 2 feet. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once slowly. "Call me if anything changes. Anything at all. Even if you think it's nothing." "Yes, sir." "And Nina." "Yes, sir. Trust your instincts tonight. Do you understand me?" She didn't nod entirely, but she nodded anyway, and Marcus walked out of the room as quietly as he had come in. The moment the door clicked shut, Nina sank into the chair beside the bed and let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Trust your instincts. What instincts? She was a housemaid. 26 years old, 2 years of community college nursing she'd never finished because her mother had gotten sick and there'd been no money. She'd come to this mansion 11 months ago answering an ad in the back of a newspaper, and she'd taken the job because it paid almost twice what any other domestic position paid in the city, and the only reason she now understood why it paid so much was because she had figured out sometime around her 3rd week exactly who Alexander Romano was. She'd almost quit then. She'd packed it a bag, and then she'd watched him do something. It had been a Tuesday. She remembered because Tuesdays were the days she changed the linens in the East Wing. She'd been carrying a basket of folded towels down the back staircase when she'd heard voices in the kitchen, and because the kitchen door was cracked open, she'd stopped on the stairs without meaning to. Alexander had been talking to Sophia the cook. Sophia was 63 years old and had worked for the Romano family since Alexander's father was alive. Her grandson had gotten sick, some kind of childhood leukemia. The treatments were experimental and the insurance wouldn't cover them, and Sophia had been crying the kind of crying old women do when they've already tried not to cry for a very long time. Alexander hadn't said anything dramatic. He hadn't even raised his voice. He'd simply said, "Give me his name, Sophia. Give me the name of the hospital. By Friday, the bills will be handled. All of them, past, present, and future. You won't see another invoice." Sophia had tried to thank him, and Alexander had cut her off. "No," he'd said, "don't thank me. You fed this house for 30 years. You've never once asked for anything. The fact that you had to ask now means I haven't been paying attention. That's my failure, not your favor." Nina had stood on that staircase with her basket of towels and felt something shift in her chest she hadn't been able to name for weeks afterward. She had not packed her bag again. Now, almost a year later, she watched the man who had said those words struggle to draw a full breath, and she felt that same shifting in her chest, only sharper now. Almost painful. "I love you," she said. She said it out loud to the dark, to the rain, to the fevered man who could not hear her. "I have loved you for months, and I am terrified that you are going to die before I ever get the chance to say it where it might matter." Alexander did not respond, but somewhere in his sleep his fingers twitched against the sheet. Nina reached forward and took his hand. It was the first time in 11 months she had ever touched him outside of her duties. His skin was burning hot. His pulse, when she pressed her fingertips to his wrist, was racing too fast, much too fast for a man simply sleeping off an illness. She frowned. She pressed harder, counted, watched the second hand of the clock crawl around its small white face. 142 beats per minute. That was wrong. That was very wrong. A man fighting a fever should have an elevated heart rate, yes, but 142. That was the kind of number she'd seen in her nursing textbooks under the chapter heading cardiac distress. That was the kind of number that came before something stopped working. She stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. The medication. She needed to look at the medication. Dr. Castellano had been at the house twice that day. He'd left a small black bag on the dresser containing 3 different bottles, each labeled in his neat physician's handwriting. Nina had administered the doses exactly as instructed. She had been very, very careful because Alexander Romano was not the kind of employer you made mistakes around, even kind mistakes, even the kind of mistakes that came from love. She crossed to the dresser and picked up the first bottle. Antibiotic. Standard. She'd seen 100 bottles like it. The second bottle, fever reducer. Also standard. The pill count matched what it should have been after the doses she'd given him. The third bottle. Nina's hand stopped in midair. The third bottle was a heart medication, a beta blocker. She knew the name from her nursing classes, knew it because her own grandmother had taken a slightly different version of it for her blood pressure. The label said 1 milligram per dose, twice daily. She unscrewed the cap. The pills inside were not 1 milligram pills. She could tell by the color. The pills inside the bottle were larger, and they were a shade of pale blue she remembered from her textbooks, and that shade of pale blue meant 3 milligrams, not 1. 3 milligrams, twice daily. To a man already fighting a fever, already dehydrated, already with a pulse running at 142 beats per minute. Nina set the bottle down on the dresser very, very carefully because if she didn't set it down carefully, she was afraid she was going to throw it across the room. 3 milligrams of a beta blocker on top of everything else his body was already fighting would not just be too much. It would, in his current state, very likely kill him. In fact, it had probably already started. She felt her hands begin to shake, and she pressed them against the top of the dresser to make them stop. She closed her eyes. She made herself breathe. Think, Nina. Think. Option 1, she called Dr. Castellano. But Dr. Castellano was the one who had labeled the bottle. Either he had made a mistake, in which case he was incompetent and not to be trusted with the next dose either, or he had not made a mistake, in which case he was the one trying to kill Alexander Romano, and she was about to call the murderer back into the house. Option 2, she called Marcus Hale. Marcus would handle it. Marcus would handle it instantly. But Marcus had been in this house all night, all day, and Marcus had access to that black bag. And Nina remembered the way Marcus had looked at her when she'd hesitated about following the doctor's instructions. Trust your instincts tonight. Why had he said that? Why those exact words? Nina opened her eyes. She did not know who in this house she could trust. She did not know who had switched the pills. She did not know if there was one person in this conspiracy or five. What she knew was that Alexander Romano was on a bed 12 feet behind her with a heart rate of 142 and rising, and his next scheduled dose of that beta blocker was in. She glanced at the clock, 47 minutes. She was the only person in this house who knew the pills were wrong, and she was a maid. And nobody in this house, if she ran into the hallway right now and screamed for help, would believe a maid over the doctor who had been treating Alexander Romano for a decade. She could feel her heartbeat in her teeth. She walked back to the bed. Alexander's lips had gone a little bluer in the last few minutes. His breathing had a faint rasp to it that hadn't been there an hour ago. She put her hand against his cheek, and his cheek was still burning, and she said very quietly, "I am about to do something that could get me killed. I want you to know that. I want you to know I knew, and I did it anyway." She walked back to the dresser. She picked up the bottle of 3 milligram pills, and she opened the small drawer in the nightstand on her side of the bed, the one where she kept her sewing kit and her glasses case and a small bottle of aspirin she carried for her own headaches. Inside the bottle of aspirin, the pills were small, white, about the size of 1 milligram, though they weren't beta blockers, they were just aspirin. But a person glancing at the bottle from a distance, a person not paying close attention, a person who was used to seeing what they expected to see would not immediately notice the difference. She poured out the aspirin. She poured out the 3 milligram beta blockers. She put the 3 milligram beta blockers into the aspirin bottle, capped it, and slid it deep into the pocket of her apron. Then she took the empty beta blocker bottle and she walked very quietly down the back stairs to the kitchen. In the kitchen, in a small locked cabinet above the refrigerator, was the household's first aid stock. Sophia had shown Nina where the key was hidden 8 months ago on the night Marcus had cut his hand on a wine bottle. Inside the cabinet were ordinary medications, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, antacids, and on the third shelf a small bottle of the beta blocker Alexander was actually supposed to be taking. 1 milligram, pale yellow, the bottle Sophia kept in case Alexander, who had a mild heart condition, Nina now realized she had never been told about, ever needed his usual dose, and the doctor wasn't around. Nina counted out enough of the correct 1 milligram pills to last 48 hours. She put them in the empty bottle Dr. Castellano had labeled. She put the bottle back exactly where she had found it, on the dresser upstairs. And then she sat down in the chair beside Alexander's bed, and she waited. At 3:47 in the morning, his scheduled dose came due. She gave him one of the correct pills, crushed it into a small spoon of water because he was barely conscious, tilted his head, parted his lips, helped him swallow. At 4:15, his pulse was 138. At 4:40, it was 129. At 5:10, it was 116. At 5:45, the rain stopped. At 6:20, just as the first gray light began to seep around the edges of the curtains, Alexander Romano opened his eyes. He did not speak at first. He looked at the ceiling. He blinked slowly the way a man blinks who is trying to remember where he is and who he is and what year it is. Then his eyes slid sideways and found Nina sitting in the chair beside him. His voice, when it came, was a whisper, nothing more. "Nina." "Yes, sir." "How long?" "Oh, 3 days, sir, going on 4. He closed his eyes again. He breathed. She waited. She did not say anything else because she did not know what to see, and because the bottle of 3 milligram pills was burning a hole in the pocket of her apron, and because she still did not know who in this house had wanted him dead. Alexander opened his eyes a second time. "Nina." "Yes, sir." "Who has been in this room?" She thought about it. She thought about it carefully. "Dr. Castellano, Mr. Hale, Sophia twice with broth, and me, and the medication." "Yes, sir." "Who handled the medication?" She swallowed. The pocket of her apron felt very heavy. "Dr. Castellano left it on the dresser, sir. I administered it according to his instructions." All of his instructions. It was not a question. It was the flattest, most knowing, not a question Nina had ever heard in her life. She felt her face go hot. She felt the pills in her pocket go heavier still. For a long moment, Alexander did not say anything else. He simply looked at her. And in that look, Nina understood something that turned her blood cold and warm at the same time. He knew. He didn't know how, and he didn't know what, but Alexander Romano had woken up from a fever that should have killed him, And he had taken one look at the maid sitting beside his bed, and he had understood that something had been done in this room that had not been on the doctor's prescription. "Nina," he said very softly. "Yes, sir." "Send for Marcus, now." "Sir, please." "Now, Nina." She rose. She walked to the door on legs that did not entirely feel like her own. She put her hand on the doorknob. And then, because she had loved this man for 11 months, and because she had risked her life for him in the dark, and because she did not know whether she was about to be thanked or buried, she turned around. "Sir," she said. "Yes, Nina. Whatever happens next, I would do it again." Alexander Romano looked at her for a long, long moment, and the corner of his mouth, the hard mouth that had not smiled at anyone in months, moved just slightly. "I know," he said. She opened the door and she went to find Marcus Hale, and she did not yet know that the man she was about to bring into that room had spent the last 6 hours wondering exactly the same thing Alexander Romano had just wondered. Who in this house had handled the medication? Marcus Hale was already halfway up the stairs when Nina reached the second landing. He saw her face before she said a word, and whatever color had been left in his own face after a sleepless night drained out of it. "Is he?" "He's awake." Marcus stopped on the step. He put a hand against the wall to steady himself, and Nina realized in that moment that this man, this lawyer who had argued down federal prosecutors and stared down rival captains across dinner tables, had genuinely believed Alexander Romano was going to die before sunrise. "Awake, awake," Marcus said, "or talking in his sleep awake." "He's asking for you, sir." "By name." "By name." Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, the lawyer was back. The frightened man Nina had seen for one unguarded heartbeat had been folded up and put away. "Lead the way," he said. She turned and walked back up the stairs with Marcus 2 steps behind her. And the entire short walk down the hallway, Nina was aware of 2 things. First, that the bottle of 3-milligram pills was still in her apron pocket, and that she could feel its weight against her thigh with every step. Second, that Marcus Hale had asked her hours ago if she had followed Dr. Castellano's instructions exactly, and she had lied to him, and Marcus had let her lie. He had stood there and watched her lie and had not corrected her, which meant Marcus had already suspected something himself, which meant Marcus had been waiting to see what she would do. She pushed open the bedroom door and stepped aside. Alexander was sitting up, barely. His back was propped against 3 pillows. His color was still terrible, but his eyes were open and they were tracking. When Marcus crossed the room, Alexander lifted one hand maybe 4 inches off the sheet, which appeared to be all the strength he had, and Marcus took that hand in both of his. "You son of a gun," Marcus said quietly. "That's no way to talk to a sick man." "You scared me." "I scared myself." For a moment, the 2 men simply held each other's hands, the way only men who have known each other for a very long time and almost lost each other can do. Then Alexander's eyes slid sideways and found Nina, who had not yet stepped fully into the room. "Close the door," he said. She closed it. "Lock it." She locked it. "Marcus?" "Yes." "Sit down." Marcus sat down in the chair Nina had occupied for the last 6 hours. Alexander looked at him for a long moment, and then he said, "Tell me what you saw." Marcus did not pretend not to understand the question. "Yesterday afternoon, around 4 o'clock. Castellano was in the room with you alone for about 11 minutes. When he came out, he was sweating. The man does not sweat, Alexander. I have known him 14 years. He played in a charity tennis tournament in 98-degree heat last August and walked off the court drier than I am right now. Yesterday, he came out of your bedroom and there was a stain on the back of his collar. I noted it. I did not act on it because I had nothing else. And then around 9 o'clock last night, I went past this door and I saw Nina sitting beside you, and I went down to my office and I pulled every prescription Castellano has written for you in the last 6 months. I cross-referenced them against your pharmacy records. There is one medication where the milligram strength on the bottle currently in this house does not match the milligram strength on any prescription Castellano has ever filed, by a factor of 3. Alexander's jaw tightened. Which one? The beta blocker. The room went very quiet. Nina, standing by the door with her hands folded in front of her apron, because she did not know what else to do with them, felt as if every inch of her skin had become a separate listening device. Alexander turned his head slowly and looked at her. Nina. Yes, sir. What's in your pocket? She did not even think about denying it. She walked to the bed. She reached into her apron pocket and she took out the small aspirin bottle and she set it down on the nightstand very gently, the way a person sets down something they are afraid will go off. That's the bottle that was on the dresser, sir, she said. The pills inside are 3 milligrams. They were labeled as 1. I switched them out at 3 in the morning for the correct 1 milligram pills from the kitchen first aid cabinet. The dose I gave you at 3:47 was the correct dose. The dose Dr. Castellano left for you would not have been. Marcus made a sound that was not quite a word. Alexander did not take his eyes off Nina. You are a maid, he said slowly. Yes, sir. You are a maid who at 3 o'clock in the morning, with no one to consult and no one to authorize you, identified a medication discrepancy that 2 of the 3 people in this house missed. Yes, sir. How? I had 2 years of nursing school, sir. Why didn't you finish? My mother got sick. Where is your mother now? Buried in St. Catherine's, sir. 3 years this April. A long pause. Alexander's eyes did not move off her face. Nina had the distinct feeling of being read like a contract. And you did not tell Marcus? No, sir. Why? Her throat closed. She had to swallow before she could speak. Because I didn't know who I could trust, sir. I knew the doctor had been in the room. I knew Mr. Hale had access to the bag. I knew Sophia brought the broth. I knew I had administered the medication myself. Any one of those 4 people could have been the one. And the only person in this house I was absolutely certain had not poisoned you was me, sir, because I would rather die than hurt you. She heard her own words a second after she said them, and she felt the heat climb her face, and she did not look away, because looking away now would have been worse. Alexander did not look away either. Marcus, he said, yes. Get Castellano on the phone. At this hour. At this hour. Tell him I had a turn for the worse, and you need him at the house in 40 minutes. Do not tell him I am awake. Do not tell him anything else. And then call Vincent. Have him at the house in 30. I want him in the kitchen pantry with the door cracked when Castellano walks in. Marcus nodded once. He stood. He started for the door, and then he stopped, and he turned, and he looked at Nina, and the look he gave her was the look a man gives a person he has badly underestimated and is trying very hard to recalibrate his entire understanding of in the space of about 4 seconds. Nina, he said, yes, sir. When this is over, you and I are going to have a conversation. Yes, sir. He left. The door clicked shut behind him. The lock was still engaged, and Nina realized she was alone in the room with Alexander Romano for the first time since the night had ended. He patted the edge of the mattress weakly. Sit. Sir, I shouldn't. Nina, sit. She sat, on the very edge of the mattress the way a person sits on a pew at a funeral. Alexander studied her for a long moment. Then he said 3 milligrams. Yes, sir. That dose on top of the fever. It would have stopped your heart, sir, probably within the next 2 doses, maybe 1 given how dehydrated you were. You knew that at 3 in the morning. Yes, sir. And you also knew that if I died in this bed under your care with my medication bottle in your apron, you would have been the one they hanged for it. She had not in fact allowed herself to think about that part out loud, but she had thought about it. Somewhere underneath every other thought, she had thought about it. She nodded just once. Yes, sir. Alexander closed his eyes. For a moment, Nina thought he had gone back to sleep, and she started to rise, and his hand came up off the sheet and caught her wrist. His grip was weak. It was the grip of a man who had been on the edge of dying 8 hours ago, but it was firm enough that she sat back down. Nina. Yes, sir. Why, boy? Why what, sir? Why did you do it? She opened her mouth. She closed it. She tried again. Sir, don't lie to me. Don't tell me it was duty. Don't tell me it was professionalism. I have had professionals all my life. None of them have ever switched out a poisoned bottle of pills at 3 in the morning while wondering if the next person through the door was going to put a bullet in them. So don't tell me it was duty, Nina. Tell me the truth. She looked down at his hand on her wrist. She looked at the gold ring on his smallest finger, the one she had polished 100 times the one she had picked up off the bathroom counter and set carefully back on his dresser more mornings than she could count. I told you the truth already, sir. When? Tonight, while you were sleeping. His thumb moved very slightly against the inside of her wrist. Tell me again. She closed her eyes. I said I loved you, sir. I said I had loved you for months. And I said I was terrified you were going to die before I ever got the chance to say it where it might matter. She opened her eyes. Alexander Romano was looking at her with an expression she had never seen on his face in 11 months of living in his house. It was not amusement. It was not pity. It was not the careful, measured, half-distant look he gave everyone, including the men he had known for 30 years. It was the look of a man who had been handed something he did not know what to do with. "Nina," he said very quietly. "Yes, sir." "You should not have said that." "I know, sir. Not because it isn't welcome, because it makes you a target." She felt her stomach drop. "Sir, whoever poisoned me," he said, "did not just want me dead. They wanted me dead in a particular way. Slow, in bed, with a doctor's signature on it. That means they have plans for what comes after I am gone. Plans that involve people in this house. Plans that involve who they think will be left in this house. And as of this moment, Nina Whitmore, you are the maid who saved my life, which means by tomorrow morning you will be a name on someone's list." She could feel her pulse in her ears. "What do I do, sir?" "You stay close to me. You do not leave this house. You do not answer the front door. You do not take any food or drink from anyone except Sophia, and you do not take it from Sophia unless I have seen her hand it to you. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "And Nina?" "Yes, sir." "What you said tonight, while I was sleeping?" "Yes, sir." "I heard it." The world in Nina's chest stopped and then started again. And then she did not know what to do with her hands or her face or the rest of her life. I don't know what to do with it yet," he said. "I want you to understand that. I don't know what to do with it. I have not been a man who does anything with that word in 20 years. But I heard you, and I did not let go of your hand on purpose." She had not realized he was still holding her wrist. She looked down. His fingers were wrapped lightly around her like a man who had decided not to release a thing he had picked up in his sleep. A knock on the door. 3 sharp raps. Marcus's knock. Alexander released her wrist. "Come." Nina rose and unlocked the door. Marcus stepped in, and behind him was a man Nina had only seen twice before in 11 months, both times briefly, both times in passing. Vincent. Tall, quiet. He wore his suit jacket the way other men wore their skin. He did not look at Nina exactly, but she had the very strong impression that he had registered every inch of her presence in approximately 1.5 seconds. "Castellano is on his way," Marcus said. 40 minutes. "Vincent. Boss. You understand what we are doing." "I understand. I want him alive when I come downstairs." "He'll be alive." "I want him to know I am alive when I come downstairs." "Understood." "Good, Marcus." "Yes. There is one more thing." Marcus waited. Alexander turned his head and looked at Nina, and then he looked back at Marcus. "Whoever paid Castellano did not pay him a small amount. A man does not poison me for pocket change. Castellano is going to give us a name. And when he gives us a name, I want everyone in this house in one room. Every single person. Sophia. The driver. The groundsman. The girl who comes Tuesdays for the laundry. Every one of them. In the dining room, I want to look every single one of them in the face when I tell them what almost happened in this house tonight." "Yes, Alexander." "And Marcus." "Yes." Nina sits at the table. A pause, just the smallest pause. Marcus's eyes flicked to Nina, then back. "At the table." "Yes." "Not in the corner, at the table." "Understood." Marcus left. Vincent left with him. The door clicked shut. Alexander leaned back against the pillows and closed his eyes, and for a moment Nina thought the conversation was over. And then he said, without opening his eyes, "Nina." "Yes, sir." "How many people did you tell about your nursing school?" "In this house, sir, none." "How many people in this house knew you could read a milligram off a pill?" "None, sir." "Then you understand what you have just become." "Sir, you have just become the only witness in this house who can testify in a way that will be believed. Because anyone else, Marcus included, can be dismissed as protecting me. You they cannot dismiss. You are the maid. You had no reason to know what those pills were. The fact that you did is the entire case." Nina swallowed. "And the people who tried to kill you will figure that out by lunch." The clock in the hallway somewhere through the wall struck the half hour. 6:30, a little less than 40 minutes until Castellano arrived. Nina did not move from the edge of the bed. She did not know if she had been dismissed. She did not know if she was supposed to leave or stay or stand against the wall or go change out of an apron she had been wearing for 30 hours. Alexander opened his eyes again. "Stay," he said before she could ask. "I don't want you in the hallway. I don't want you in the kitchen. I want you exactly where you are until Castellano is in this house, until Vincent has him, until I am downstairs. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." "Good." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Nina." "Yes, sir." "In your nursing school, did they teach you how to take a pulse without holding the wrist?" "Yes, sir. There's a point at the side of the neck." "Show me." She hesitated. Then she leaned forward very carefully and pressed 2 fingers against the side of his throat just under the line of his jaw. His pulse beat slow and weak, but steady against her fingertips. 94, she said after a moment. Down from 142 at 3 in the morning. "Good." "Yes, sir." "Nina." "Yes, sir." "Don't take your hand away yet." She did not. She kept her fingers there against the line of his throat, feeling the slow, steady beat of a heart that should have been still. His eyes closed again, his breathing slowed. Outside the window, the gray light was beginning to turn to gold, and in the kitchen, 2 floors below the front gate, buzzer went off. Castellano was early. Nina's fingers were still on Alexander's throat when the buzzer went off, and she felt his pulse jump under her fingertips before the rest of his body even registered the sound. "He's early," she said. "He's nervous." "Sir, do you want me to?" "Stay where you are." Downstairs, she could hear Marcus's voice through the floor, low and even, the way Marcus always spoke, when something inside him was not even at all. She heard the front door open. She heard footsteps. She heard another voice, lighter, faster, the cadence of a man who had been rehearsing what he was going to say in the car all the way over. "How is he?" Castellano said. "Worse," Marcus said. "How much worse?" "He hasn't opened his eyes since 4. There was a silence. Nina could picture it. Castellano standing in the foyer with his black bag, calculating, doing the math in his head, asking himself whether worse meant the dose was working or whether worse meant the man was already dead and he had walked into a trap. "Take me to him," Castellano said. In a moment, Sophia made coffee. "You look like you need it." "Marcus, I should really see him first." "He isn't going anywhere, Walter. Sit. 2 minutes." Nina heard the kitchen door swing open. She heard a chair scrape against the floor. She heard the soft clink of a coffee cup against a saucer. And then she heard nothing at all for almost 90 seconds because Vincent presumably had stepped out of the pantry, and a man with a coffee cup at his lips does not always have time to say anything before a hand closes around the back of his neck. Alexander's eyes were open now. "Help me up," he said. "Sir, you're not strong enough." "Nina, help me up." She slid an arm behind his shoulders. He was heavier than she expected, the kind of heavy a body becomes when it has spent 4 days fighting and lost most of what it had. She got him upright. He swung his legs over the side of the bed. He sat there for a moment, breathing carefully, his hands flat on his thighs. "Robe," he said. She brought it. She helped him into it. She tied the belt for him because his fingers were shaking too badly to do it himself, and he let her, and neither of them said anything about it. Slippers. She knelt and slid them onto his feet. "Nina." "Yes, sir." "You walk on my left side. You walk close enough that if I start to go down, you can take my weight. You do not let anyone in this house see me lean on you. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good." He stood. For 1 terrible second, she thought he was going to fall. Then he straightened somewhere deep inside himself in a way Nina would never quite be able to describe afterward, and he became Alexander Romano again. Not entirely, not the way he had been a week ago, but enough. They walked. Down the hallway slowly. Down the stairs more slowly. At the bottom of the stairs, he had to stop for a moment, and his hand found her shoulder, and she stood very still and let him use her as a railing, and he said very softly, "Thank you." It was the first time he had ever thanked her for anything. "Yes, sir." He took his hand off her shoulder. He straightened. They walked into the kitchen. Walter Castellano was sitting at the kitchen table with his hands flat on the wood, and Vincent standing behind him, and the moment Alexander appeared in the doorway, Castellano made a sound like a man who had stepped on a stair that was not there. "Alexander." "Walter." You're up." "I am." That's a miracle, truly. I was just telling Marcus I was so worried last night. The fever was—" "Walter, yes, don't." The doctor's mouth closed. Alexander walked slowly to the chair at the head of the table. Nina pulled it out for him. He sat. He did not take his eyes off Castellano. Marcus stood at the doorway. Vincent stood behind Castellano. Nina stood uncertain by the wall. Nina. Yes, sir. Sit. She sat. She sat in the chair to Alexander's right, the chair she had wiped down 10,000 times in 11 months and never once sat in. She kept her hands folded in her lap because she did not trust them anywhere else. Alexander reached into the pocket of his robe and he set a small bottle on the kitchen table, the aspirin bottle, with the 3-milligram pills inside it. Castellano looked at the bottle. He looked at Nina. He looked back at the bottle, and every drop of color that had been left in his face went somewhere else. Walter, Alexander said, tell me about this bottle. Alexander, I don't. Tell me about the milligram strength. I don't know what you're, Walter. Alexander's voice did not rise. He did not lean forward. He did not raise a hand. He simply said the man's name one time very quietly in the voice he used when he was finished asking. Castellano started to cry. It was not loud crying. It was the silent, stunned crying of a man who had been carrying something for weeks and had not realized how heavy it was until the moment it came off him. He covered his face with one hand. His shoulders shook. Who paid you? Alexander said. Alexander, I have a daughter. I know you have a daughter, Walter. I paid for her wedding. Who paid you? They said it was just to weaken you, They said nobody was going to They just needed you out of commission for the meeting on Thursday. Who? Alexander, please. Walter, I am going to ask one more time, and then Vincent is going to ask, and Vincent does not ask the way I ask. Who paid you? Castellano took his hand away from his face. He looked at Alexander. He looked at Marcus. He looked at Nina, and for a half second his eyes lingered on Nina. And Nina understood with absolute clarity that this man had counted on her not knowing what those pills were. He had counted on the maid not being able to read a label. He had built his entire plan on the idea that the woman in the apron was wallpaper. Daniel, Castellano whispered. The kitchen went silent. Marcus from the doorway said, Daniel who? Daniel Romano. Alexander did not move. He did not blink. His hand resting on the table beside the aspirin bottle did not so much as twitch. But Nina, sitting beside him watching his profile, saw something happen in his jaw, in the muscle at the hinge of it, that she would remember for the rest of her life. My nephew, Alexander said. Yes. My brother's son. Yes. The boy I put through law school. Yes. The boy who came to this house every Sunday for dinner, for doa, from the time he was 9 years old. Castellano started crying again harder. Alexander, he said it was just a few days. He said you would recover. He said, how much did he pay you, Walter? 200,000 for my life. He said you wouldn't die. 3 milligrams of a beta blocker on a man with my heart history, 4 days into a fever, dehydrated, with a pulse already running at 140. Walter, look at me. You are a doctor. You are not a stupid man. You knew. You knew what that dose would do. Castellano did not answer. He did not need to. Alexander turned his head slowly and looked at Marcus. Where is Daniel right now? He's at his apartment in the city. As of 40 minutes ago, I had Tomas check before Castellano got here. Is he alone? He's alone. Get him alive. A long pause. Alive, Alexander said. I want to look him in the face. Marcus nodded once. He stepped out of the kitchen. Nina heard him on the phone in the hallway, his voice low and clipped, and measured the voices of a man giving instructions he had given many times before in his life, and would almost certainly give many times again. Vincent stayed where he was, one hand resting on the back of Castellano's chair, in a way that was not exactly a threat, but was not exactly not one either. Alexander turned back to the doctor. Walter. Yes. Your daughter is 26 years old. She is married. Her husband is an architect. They live in a house on Pine Street that you co-signed the mortgage for. Is any of this incorrect? No. Walter, listen to me very carefully. I am not going to hurt your daughter. I am not going to hurt her husband. I am not going to hurt your grandchildren when they come, and they will come, because I happen to know your daughter is 6 weeks pregnant, which she has not told you yet, but she will tell you next month at your birthday dinner, because I had a very long conversation with her in March about whether she was ready, and she was. So I am going to tell you something, Walter, and I want you to hear it the way I am saying it. Your family is not in danger from me. Do you understand? Castellano was crying so hard now he could not speak. He nodded. Good. Now, you are going to write down on the paper Marcus is going to bring you every single conversation you had with my nephew. Every meeting, every payment, every word. You are going to write it down clearly and you are going to sign it. And then you are going to walk out of this house and you are going to push yourself home and you are going to wait. You will not run. You will not call anyone. You will not warn my nephew, because if you do any of those things, the document you just signed will go to the federal prosecutor on Monday morning, and you will spend the rest of your life in a cell explaining to other men why a doctor poisoned his oldest friend. Do you understand me? Yes. And Walter? Yes. You are never to practice medicine again. Not in this state, not in any state. You will close your office on Monday. You will refer your patients to Dr. Henley on Brookline Avenue. You will tell them you are retiring for personal reasons. If I hear you have written so much as a prescription for cough syrup after Monday, that document goes to the prosecutor regardless. Are we clear? We're clear. Good. Vincent. Boss. Get him out of my sight. Vincent lifted Castellano out of the chair with a gentleness that was almost worse than violence would have been. He walked the doctor out of the kitchen. Marcus came back in, slid into the chair Castellano had vacated, and looked at Alexander with the patient, quiet face of a man who had seen many endings and was preparing himself for another one. Tomas is on his way to Daniel's apartment, he said. 40 minutes. Good. Alexander. Yes. Are you sure? About what, Mon? About bringing him here. Alive. To this house. Alexander was quiet for a moment. He looked down at his hand on the kitchen table. Nina noticed for the first time that his hand was trembling. Not visibly, not the kind of tremor anyone across the table would have caught. But sitting beside him, watching him, she saw the small, fine shake of a man whose body had been emptied and was running on something other than strength. Marcus, he said. Yes. I held that boy when he was 3 days old. I held him in the hospital while my brother smoked a cigarette in the parking lot because my brother was 22 years old and terrified. I carried that boy on my shoulders to his first day of kindergarten. I sat in the second row at his college graduation. I gave him the down payment on his first car. I gave him his first job. I gave him his name. He carries my name, Marcus. He is the only person left in this world who carries my name. I know. And he tried to kill me for $200,000 and a chair at a meeting on Thursday. I know, Alexander. So yes, I'm sure. I want him in this house. I want him in this kitchen. I want him sitting in that chair Castellano just vacated. And I want him to look me in the face and explain to me what part of his life I failed to give him that he had to take the rest of it from me with a syringe. Marcus did not answer. There was no answer to give. Alexander leaned back in his chair. He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he looked at Nina. You haven't said a word. No, sir. Why? It wasn't my place, sir. Nina. Yes, sir. After what happened in this kitchen, it is your place forever. Do you understand? She did not exactly, but she nodded. Yes, sir. What are you thinking right now? Right this second, tell me. She looked at him. She looked at Marcus. She looked at her own hands in her lap. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that if your nephew was willing to do this to you, sir, then he had to have someone helping him inside the house, because Dr. Castellano did not switch out those pills from his office. The pills he brought in his bag were the right ones, or Mr. Hale's pharmacy records would not match. The switch happened here, in this house, after Dr. Castellano left them on the dresser. Which means somebody who lives in this house or works in this house opened that bottle and changed those pills. And that somebody is still in this house right now. The kitchen went absolutely silent. Marcus sat forward, and she's right. I know she's right, Alexander said. Castellano didn't switch them himself. He didn't have time. He was in the room with me for 11 minutes yesterday. You said it yourself. He left the bag. He went to the bathroom in the hallway. He came back. He left. He did not have a window long enough to swap a bottle without me catching him, fever or no fever. Somebody else did it. Then who? Alexander turned slowly and he looked at Nina. Who in this house had access to that bag between 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon and 3 o'clock this morning? Nina's mouth went dry. Sir, think, Nina. Think carefully. She thought. She thought hard. She walked through the hours in her head, hour by hour, the way she had walked through them with her thumb on his pulse all night. Sophia brought the broth at 6, she said. I was in the bathroom changing his cloths. She was alone with the bag for maybe 2 minutes. Marcus said Sophia would never. At 7:30, the cleaning girl came up to take the laundry. Nina said, I let her in. She was in the room for perhaps a minute and a half. The bag was on the dresser. I had my back to her folding towels. What's her name? Alexander said. Rosa, sir. Marcus. On it. At 9, Nina said, You came up, sir. Mr. Hale, you were in the room for maybe 4 minutes. The bag was still on the dresser. You walked past it twice. Marcus's face did not change, but Nina saw very clearly the moment he understood what she had just said in front of his employer. Nina, Marcus said evenly, are you accusing me? No, sir. I am answering Mr. Romano's question. He asked me who had access. Marcus, Alexander said. Yes, Alexander. She's not accusing you. She's being thorough. I asked her to be. I understand. Do you, Marcus? I do, Alexander. Good. Because tomorrow when I sit at this table with my nephew, I'm going to ask him a question. And his answer is going to tell me whether the person who switched those pills is in this kitchen right now or whether they are not. And until I have that answer, every person in this house, including you, including Sophia, including the girl named Rosa, is on a list. And the only name not on the list, Marcus, is the name of the woman sitting to my right. Marcus did not flinch. Understood. Good. Alexander turned to Nina. Nina. Yes, sir. From this moment until I tell you otherwise, you do not eat anything in this house that you have not prepared yourself. You do not drink anything in this house that has not come from a sealed bottle you have opened yourself. You do not sleep in the maid's quarters. You sleep in the room next to mine. You lock the door. You keep the key on you. Are we clear? Yes, sir. And Nina? Yes, sir. There is a small revolver in the top drawer of my dresser. It is loaded. The safety is on. I am going to teach you how to use it tonight. She felt her hands go cold in her lap. Yes, sir. Alexander reached over then, and he covered her folded hands with one of his own. His hand was warm now. The fever had broken. The trembling had stopped. His grip was the grip of a man returning to himself. Nina, he said very quietly. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. For what, sir? For dragging you into this. You came to this house to make a wage. You did not come to this house to be taught how to fire a revolver. I am sorry. She looked at his hand on hers. She looked at his face. And she said the only thing she had left to say. Sir, I came to this house 11 months ago because I needed the money. I stayed in this house for 11 months because of you. I am still in this house this morning because I love you. You have not dragged me anywhere. I walked. Alexander Romano did not answer her in words. He simply turned her hand over in his own and held it. And in the front hallway of the mansion, the front door opened, and Tomas's voice said very quietly, We've got a problem. Marcus was on his feet before Tomas finished the sentence. What kind of problem? Daniel's not at the apartment. You said he was alone. He was alone 40 minutes ago. He's gone now. Door was unlocked. Coffee on the counter. Still warm. Alexander did not move. His hand stayed where it was, covering Nina's. He did not look at Tomas. He looked at the wall in front of him, at the small clock above the kitchen doorway, and Nina watched his face do the thing his face had done upstairs an hour ago, the thing where something behind his eyes calculated faster than the rest of him moved. Marcus. Yes. He's coming here. Alexander, he wouldn't. Marcus. He's coming here. He left coffee on the counter. A man does not leave warm coffee in his own apartment unless somebody called him in the middle of pouring it. Somebody called him. Somebody told him Castellano was on his way to this house. Somebody told him I might still be alive. Castellano didn't have time to call anybody. Vincent was on him from the second he walked through the door. Then it wasn't Castellano. The kitchen went silent. Nina felt her own pulse in her throat. She did not move her hand from under Alexander's because Alexander had not moved his, and because moving it now would have felt like flinching, and she would not flinch. Not in this kitchen, not at this table, not with her name on a list. Tomas, Alexander said. Boss. Front gate, now. Take Lou, take Eddie. I want 2 men on the gate, 2 on the back lawn, and one on every entrance to this house. Nobody comes in. Nobody, including my nephew, especially my nephew. Are we clear? Crystal, go. Tomas was gone. The front door closed. Alexander's hand finally lifted from Nina's, and the absence of it was a small, cold thing she did not have time to feel because Alexander was already turning toward Marcus. Who else knew Castellano was coming this morning? You, me, Vincent, the man on the front gate. Names. Eddie. Anyone in this house who is not on that list. A pause. The smallest pause. Marcus did not like the pause, and Nina could see him not liking it. Sophia heard me on the phone in the hallway. I was talking to Vincent. She walked past with the laundry. I lowered my voice, but I cannot promise she didn't catch a name. Sophia. She walked past Alexander. I am not saying she did anything. I am saying I cannot account for her ears. Where is Sophia right now? I don't know. Probably the pantry. She starts breakfast at 7. Find her. Bring her here. Alexander. Marcus, bring her here. Marcus stood. He left. Nina sat very still beside Alexander, and after a moment, Alexander said without looking at her, Nina, yes, sir. What do you know about Sophia? She's been kind to me, sir. That isn't what I asked. I know, sir. I am answering anyway. She was the first person in this house to speak to me without looking through me. She showed me where the first aid cabinet was. She told me how you took your coffee. She told me which floors creaked and which not to walk on at night because she said you slept badly and any small sound woke you. She told me the names of every person who worked in this house and what their mothers had named them because she said a person without a name is a person you cannot care about. Sir, in 11 months, she has not once said a single thing to me about you that was not protective. Ushem. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Protective of me, he said, or protective of her place at my table. Nina did not answer. She did not know. The kitchen door swung open. Marcus came in. Sophia came in behind him. She was wiping her hands on a dish towel, and the moment she saw Alexander sitting at the head of the table in a robe, in a kitchen at 7 in the morning with a small aspirin bottle on the wood between them, her hands stopped. Holy Mother of God, she said, you're up. I am. They told me, Marcus, they said you were. Sophia, sit. Alexander, what is this? Sit, Sophia. She sat. She sat in the chair Castellano had cried in 40 minutes earlier. She put the dish towel in her lap and folded it carefully, and Nina, who had spent 11 months watching this woman move around a kitchen, saw Sophia's hands fold the towel 3 times instead of 2, the way a person does a familiar thing when they are trying not to do an unfamiliar one. Sophia. Yes, Alexander. Last night, after Castellano left, did you go into my bedroom? I brought you broth at 6. I sat with you for a moment. I wiped your forehead with a cool cloth. Nina was in the bathroom rinsing the cloths. I did not stay long. Did you touch the black bag on my dresser? A pause. Sophia's hands stopped folding the towel. Alexander. Sophia, did you touch the bag? I moved it. You moved it. It was on the dresser. There was a glass of water beside it. The glass was sweating. The water was making a ring on the wood. I picked the bag up and I put it on the chair so I could move the glass and wipe the dresser. Then I put the bag back. Did you open the bag? No. Sophia. I did not open the bag, Alexander, on my husband's grave. I moved it. I wiped the wood. I put it back. I did not open it. Alexander looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, Sophia, last night on the phone in the hallway, Marcus was talking to Vincent. You walked past. What did you hear? Sophia's eyes filled, not from fear, from something else, something older and harder than fear. I heard him say your nephew's name. Marcus by the doorway closed his eyes. What did you do with that? Alexander said. Nothing, Alexander. I did nothing. I went to the pantry. I sat on the stool. I prayed. I prayed for an hour. I prayed because in this house, when a man says your nephew's name on the phone in the middle of the night, in a voice the way Marcus was using that voice, I know what it means. I have lived in this house 30 years. I know what it means. And I prayed because I have known that boy since he was 9 years old, and I could not believe what the voice was telling me. Did you call him? No. Sophia. Alexander, I did not call him. I would not. I did not. Did you call anyone? A pause. A longer pause this time. I called my sister, Sophia said. The kitchen went still. Your sister, Alexander said. In Naples, I called my sister in Naples. I told her I was frightened. I told her something terrible was happening in the house and I could not say what. I told her to pray with me. That is all I said, Alexander. I swear on my husband. I swear on my grandson. That is all I said. What time did you call her? A little after midnight, maybe 12:30. How long was the call? 6 minutes, maybe 7. Marcus stepped forward. Alexander, her sister is 81 years old. She lives in a fishing village. She does not know your nephew exists. I know that. Then, Marcus, sit down. Marcus sat. Alexander reached across the table very gently and he put his hand on top of Sophia's folded ones. Sophia? Yes, Alexander. I am not accusing you. I know you are not. Then why are you crying? Because you had to ask. Alexander closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his hand was still on hers, and Nina, watching him, watching the way he looked at this old woman who had fed him for 30 years, saw something in his face that she had not seen before. Not even when he had looked at her upstairs in the bedroom. It was older than that look. It was the look of a man who had just understood that the price of running a house like this one was that every 20 or 30 years, you had to ask a person who had loved you whether they had betrayed you, and you had to ask it to their face, and there was no way to take the asking back. Go, he said softly. Make breakfast. Make whatever you want. Make it for everyone in this house. I will eat what you make. Do you understand? Yes, Alexander. Sophia. Yes. Thank you. Sophia nodded. She stood. She did not look at Marcus. She did not look at Nina. She walked back to her stove with the dish towel still in her hand, and she did not turn around, and Nina watched her shoulders shake exactly twice before they steadied. Alexander sat back. He looked at Marcus. It wasn't her. No. Then who called Daniel? I don't know. Marcus? Yes. Who in this house knew before 5 o'clock this morning that I might be alive? A pause. You, me, Vincent, Nina, Anne, and Tomas, Eddie, Lou, the men on the gate. Are any of those men close to my nephew? Marcus's face did a thing. Eddie used to drive him. When? When Daniel was in law school, 3-4 nights a week, I used to send Eddie to pick him up from the library. They got close. How close? Eddie was at his graduation. Daniel got him a watch. Alexander did not move. He did not blink. But Nina saw his fingers curl very slightly against the wood of the table. Where is Eddie right now? On the front gate. I sent him out 15 minutes ago. Marcus. Yes. Get on the phone right now. Tomas only. Tell Tomas to take Eddie's gun off him. Quietly. I do not want a shot fired on my front lawn. Do it now. Marcus was already moving. He was at the doorway. He had the phone in his hand. He was speaking in the voice Nina had now heard 3 times this morning, the voice that did not waste a syllable, the voice that knew exactly which 2 sentences needed to come out of his mouth and in what order. Tomas, take Eddie's piece. Now, don't ask, don't explain. I'll be on the porch in 2 minutes. He hung up. He looked at Alexander. Go, Alexander said. Bring him here. Same chair, where the doctor sat. Marcus went. Alexander turned slowly and looked at Nina. Nina. Yes, sir. How are you? She almost laughed. It came up in her throat and she swallowed it back down because it would have come out wrong. I'm in over my head, sir. I know. I'm doing my best, sir. I know that too. He was quiet for a moment. Nina. Yes, sir. There is something I need to ask you, and I need you to answer me carefully, because the next 10 minutes of my life depend on the answer. Yes, sir. 11 months ago when you came to this house, who interviewed you? Her mouth opened. Her mouth closed. Mr. Hale, sir. Marcus. Yes, sir. Anyone else? There was another man. He sat in the corner. He did not say anything. He looked at my paperwork. Describe him. Tall, dark hair, handsome, about 35. He smiled a lot, but not with his eyes. He had a watch with a gold band. He said one thing to me as I was leaving. He said, "You'll be good for this house." That was all. Alexander closed his eyes. Sir, Nina said. Sir, who? That was Daniel. The kitchen tilted very slightly around her. Sir, my nephew sat in on your interview, Nina, 11 months ago. He looked at your paperwork. He decided you were the kind of woman who would be good for this house. Do you understand what I am telling you? No, sir. I'm sorry, sir, I don't. He hired you, Nina, or rather he approved you. He looked at a young woman with 2 years of nursing school and a dead mother and a need for money, and he approved her for the position of housemaid in the house of the uncle he was already 11 months ago planning to kill. Do you understand now? She understood. The pieces moved into place inside her chest like stones falling into a well, one after another, and she understood. He picked me, she said slowly, because he thought I would be the one administering the medication when the time came. Yes. He thought a woman with 2 years of nursing school would be trusted to give the pills. Yes. He thought when you died, the doctor would say it was natural. The maid would back him up. 2 years of nursing school would be just enough credibility to confirm it, not enough to question it. Yes. He used me, sir. He tried to. He tried to use me to kill you. Yes. She sat very still. She felt her face go hot and then cold. She felt her hands ball up in her lap. She did not cry because she had stopped being a woman who cried at 3:47 that morning, and she was not going to start being one again at 7:15. Sir. Yes, Nina. When he comes through that door. Yes. I want to be in this kitchen. Nina. Sir, he picked me out of a stack of resumes 11 months ago because he thought I was the kind of woman who would do what she was told and not ask questions. He looked at my paperwork and he decided I was wallpaper. I want to be in this kitchen when he sees me sitting at this table. I want him to see my face. I want him to understand that the maid he picked, sir, is the reason he failed. Alexander looked at her. He looked at her for a very long time, and then he nodded. You'll be in this kitchen, he said. Thank you, sir. Nina. Yes, sir. There is one more thing I want you to understand before he gets here. Yes, sir. My nephew is not going to walk into this kitchen and confess. He is going to walk into this kitchen and try to be charming. He is going to cry. He is going to apologize. He is going to talk about his father, about his mother, about how much I have meant to him. He is going to try every single thing he has ever learned about me to find the lever that opens me. Do you understand? Yes, sir. And the lever, Nina, that he is going to find first is you, sir. He is going to figure out in the first 30 seconds of looking at this table that you are sitting where you are not supposed to be sitting. He is going to figure out, because he is not stupid, that the maid he picked has become something more than a maid. And he is going to use you. He is going to ask you questions. He is going to ask you about your mother. He is going to ask you about St. Catherine's. He is going to mention the cemetery by name because he saw it on your paperwork 11 months ago. And he has the kind of memory that holds things like that. He is going to try to make you cry. Because if he can make you cry, Nina, I will hesitate. And if I hesitate, he will use the hesitation. She felt her stomach turn. What do you need me to do, sir? I need you to not cry. Sir, whatever he says, whatever he asks, whatever he tries, Nina, you do not give him a single drop of water from your eyes. Do you understand? You sit in that chair. You keep your hands folded. You answer nothing. You look at him the way you would look at a dead bug on a windowsill. Can you do that? She thought about it. She thought about her mother in St. Catherine's. She thought about the man with the gold-banded watch who had smiled without his eyes and said she would be good for this house. She thought about 3 milligrams. She thought about a pulse of 142. She thought about the bottle in her apron and the way Alexander's hand had felt on hers 10 minutes ago. Yes, sir, she said. I can do that. Good. The front door opened. Thomas's voice in the hallway, Marcus's voice, and a third voice, lighter, younger. The voice of a man who had been talking the whole way up the driveway. A misunderstanding. That's all this is. Just give me 5 minutes with him. That's all I'm asking you, Marcus. You've known me since I was a kid. You know, I would never... The kitchen door opened. Daniel Romano stepped through it. He was 35 years old. Handsome in the way Alexander had been handsome 20 years ago, but softer, looser. A face that had not yet been carved by the things that carved Alexander's face. He was wearing a navy overcoat and a white shirt with no tie. His hair was damp from the morning. He looked for one full second at his uncle, sitting at the head of the kitchen table. And then he looked at Nina. She watched it happen on his face. She watched the recognition. She watched the calculation. She watched the precise instant he understood that the maid he had approved 11 months ago was sitting in a chair she should not have been sitting in. His face did not change, but something behind his eyes did. "Uncle," he said, and he smiled, and his smile had no eyes in it at all. "Daniel, you're up." "I am." "That's God, that's a relief." When Marcus called, I thought, "Sit down, Daniel." "Of course." "In that chair." "Of course, Uncle." He crossed to the chair Castellano had cried in. He sat. He folded his hands on the table in front of him, the same way Sophia had folded her dish towel half an hour ago, and Nina watched his fingers and saw that they were not shaking. Not at all, not even a little. That was the thing that frightened her most. "Daniel," Alexander said quietly. "Yes, Uncle." "Tell me about the meeting on Thursday." And Daniel Romano, sitting in the same chair the doctor had wept in 40 minutes earlier, opened his mouth to speak. "The meeting on Thursday," Daniel said easily, "with the Calabrese people." "Uncle, I don't understand what—" "Daniel." "Yes." "Don't." The younger man's mouth closed. He held his uncle's eyes for a beat. He smiled again, that smile that did not reach the rest of his face. "Uncle, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Marcus said on the phone that—" "Marcus did not call you Daniel. He called me 30 minutes ago. Marcus called Tomas. Tomas was sent to your apartment. Your apartment was empty. Your coffee was still warm. Somebody else called you Daniel. Somebody else told you to leave that apartment. I want you to tell me very carefully who it was." A pause, the smallest pause. Daniel's hand moved an inch on the table. "Eddie," he said. Alexander did not blink. "Eddie." "Uncle, I can explain." "Eddie called you and told you what?" "He told me Castellano was on his way to the house. He told me you'd taken a turn. He thought I'd want to know. Uncle, he's been driving me since I was 22. Of course he—" "Daniel." "Yes." "Eddie is at this moment sitting in the back of a car in my driveway with Tomas's hand on the back of his neck. Eddie has already given us a great deal of information in the last 6 minutes. So before you finish that sentence, I want you to think very carefully about whether the next words out of your mouth match the words that are already on the record in my driveway." Daniel's smile did something. It did not go away. It just stopped meaning the same thing. "Uncle." "Yes, Daniel. What do you want me to say?" "I want you to tell me why." "Uncle, why? Why, Daniel? That is the only word I want to hear from you. Not how, not when, not who else. I will get those answers myself. From you today in this kitchen, at this table, I want one word. I want why. Look me in the face and tell me why." Daniel did not answer for a long moment. Then his eyes slid sideways. They found Nina. "Hello, Nina." Nina did not answer. "It's Nina, isn't it? From the interview. 11 months ago?" Nina did not answer. "You've been busy." She kept her hands folded. She kept her eyes on his. She did not blink, and she did not breathe out, and she did not give him a single drop of water from her eyes. "I remember your mother," Daniel said gently. "She was buried in St. Catherine's, wasn't she? The cemetery on the hill. Spring of 3 years ago. I'm sorry for your loss." Nina did not answer. "My uncle has a way of making people feel chosen, doesn't he? It's a real gift. I used to feel it myself when I was small, when he carried me on his shoulders. He has a way of making you feel like you matter, until you don't. And then Nina, he has a way of making you wish you had never mattered at all." Alexander said very quietly, "Daniel, look at me." Daniel did not look at him. "Nina, I want you to understand something," Daniel said. "Whatever he has told you about me, whatever he has told you about this family, whatever he has told you about loyalty, he told my father the same thing. My father was 22 years old, Nina and terrified, and Alexander stood in a hospital parking lot and promised my father he would always be looked after. My father is dead, Nina. My father has been dead for 19 years. My father died alone in a motel room in New Jersey because Alexander Romano decided he was inconvenient. So whatever he has told you tonight, whatever he has held your hand and whispered, you should know that I am sitting in this chair because Alexander Romano is the kind of man who buries his own brother and then carries the brother's son on his shoulders to kindergarten so the boy will never know." Marcus by the doorway made a sound, a small one. Alexander did not move. Nina did not move either. She looked at Daniel. She looked at his face, at the eyes that were not quite warm enough, at the mouth that smiled too easily, at the hands that did not shake. She looked at the boy who had been carried to kindergarten on the shoulders of the man at the head of the table. She looked at the man who had sat in on her interview 11 months ago and decided she would be good for this house. And she did finally what Alexander had asked her to do. She looked at him the way she would have looked at a dead bug on a windowsill. "Mr. Romano," she said evenly to Alexander without taking her eyes off Daniel, "your nephew is asking me to feel sorry for him. He is doing it in front of you. He is doing it because he thinks I am the leaver. I want you to know, sir, that I am not the leaver." Alexander did not look at her. He did not need to. "Daniel," he said, "Uncle, my brother died of an overdose in a motel in New Jersey 19 years ago. He did so with a needle in his arm and $3,000 of my money in his coat pocket because I had given it to him the day before to get him out of New Jersey and into a hospital. He did not go to the hospital. He went to a motel. He did what he did. I buried him on a Tuesday. I sat with your mother for 6 hours afterward. I told your mother on her kitchen floor that I would raise you as my own. I have done that, Daniel. For 19 years I have done that. So the next time you sit at my table and tell a young woman I killed your father, I want you to know that the only person at this table who knows the truth of what happened in that motel besides me is the man who identified the body for me, and the man who identified the body for me is standing in that doorway right now, Marcus. He's lying, Alexander. Tell him." Marcus stepped forward. His face was the face of a man who had been keeping a thing in his chest for 19 years and had not enjoyed the keeping of it. "Daniel," Marcus said, "I drove your uncle to that motel. I sat in the parking lot. He went in alone. He came out with your father's wallet and your father's wedding ring and his own sleeves wet to the elbows because he had tried for 9 minutes to start your father's heart on the floor of room 24. He did not stop trying until I went in and pulled him off the body. He carried your father out of that motel himself. He would not let the coroner do it. He drove your father home in the back of the car with his own coat over him because it was January, and he said he did not want your father cold. So whatever you have told yourself, whatever story you have built for 19 years, whatever you needed to believe to look at yourself in the mirror, Daniel, hear me. Your uncle did not kill your father. Your father killed your father. And your uncle has carried that body in one form or another every single day since." Daniel's face did not change for a long moment. Then it changed all at once. It was not a dramatic change. He did not weep. He did not shout. The smile, the careful smile he had walked in with, simply slid off his face the way wet paint slides off a wall. And what was underneath it was a 35-year-old man who had for 19 years been telling himself a story that was not true, and who had just been told by the only two people in the world who could have told him that the story was a lie. "You're lying," he said. "No," Marcus said. "You're lying. Both of you." "Daniel," Alexander said very quietly, "who told you that story about the motel? About me? Who told you?" A pause. "My mother," Daniel whispered. "Your mother. She told me when I was 16. She said, your mother loved your father, Daniel. Your mother loved your father in a way that did not survive what happened in that motel. She needed someone to blame. She picked me. I let her. I let her, Daniel, because she was my brother's wife, and she was your mother, and she had nothing else. And if blaming me let her get out of bed in the morning to raise you, then I would carry it. I have carried it. I am still carrying it. I would have carried it until I died. But I will not carry it while you sit in my kitchen and use it to explain why you put 3 milligrams of a beta blocker in my medication. So you will look at me, Daniel, and you will tell me in your own voice, with your own mouth, that you understand what I am saying to you." Daniel was crying now, quietly. He was not pretending, and he was not performing. He was simply leaking the way a man leaks when something he has been holding for 19 years lets go all at once. "I understand," he said. "Say it again." "I understand, Uncle." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "Daniel, yes, I am not going to kill you." Marcus by the doorway did not move. But Nina, watching Marcus's profile, saw his shoulders shift very slightly, the way the shoulders of a man shift when the thing he had been ready to do has been taken off the list. "Uncle, I am not going to kill you, Daniel. I am not going to have Vincent kill you. I am not going to have anyone kill you. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Uncle. What I am going to do is this. You are going to walk out of this house. You are going to get on a plane this afternoon. The plane is going to land in a city I will name. A man will meet you at the airport. He will take you to a house. You will live in that house. You will not come back to this country. You will not contact anyone in this family. You will not contact your mother. You will not contact me. You will not contact Marcus. You will live there, Daniel, for the rest of your life. On a small allowance I will arrange. And every month on the first day of the month, I will send you a letter. The letter will say one word. The word will be your father. Just those two words. Your father. So that for the rest of your life, on the first day of every month, you will be reminded of the man you said I killed, and you will know that I am still alive, and that I am still your uncle, and that I am still carrying him. Do you understand? Daniel was sobbing now. Yes, uncle. Marcus. Yes. Get him out of my kitchen. I do not want to see his face again. Marcus stepped forward. He took Daniel by the elbow. He lifted him not unkindly out of the chair. Daniel did not resist. He walked on legs that did not entirely work past Nina, past Sophia at the stove, past the small aspirin bottle on the table, and he did not look at any of them. At the doorway he stopped. He turned. He looked at his uncle one last time. Uncle. Yes, Daniel. I'm sorry, I know. I really am. I know that too. Go, Daniel. He went. The kitchen door swung shut behind him. The front door opened in a moment and closed, and there was the sound of a car starting. And then there was no sound at all. And Alexander Romano put his face in his hands for the first time since he had opened his eyes that morning. Nina did not move. Sophia at the stove did not move. After perhaps a minute, Alexander took his hands away from his face. His eyes were wet. He did not pretend they were not. Sophia. Yes, Alexander. Breakfast. Yes, Alexander. For four, you, Marcus, Nina, me. Yes, Alexander. At this table. Yes, Alexander. She turned back to the stove. Her hands were steady now. She cracked eggs into a bowl with the precise, untroubled motion of a woman who had cracked eggs in this kitchen 10,000 times before, and Nina understood watching her that for Sophia this was how she would carry what had just happened in this room, with eggs, with breakfast, with the daily ordinary holy work of feeding the people who had survived. Marcus came back in. He sat down at the table without being asked. He looked older than he had looked an hour ago. He's in the car. Good. Tomas will have him at the airport by 10. Good. Eddie has been with me 12 years, Alexander said. I know. His sister is sick. He sends her money. I know that too. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Send him away. Same arrangement. Different city. Tell him the sister keeps her money. Tell him if he ever comes back, the money stops. Tell him that is the only mercy I have left in me today. Yes, Alexander. Marcus? Yes. I'm sorry I made you wonder this morning whether I trusted you. You don't have to. Marcus, I am sorry. Marcus looked down at his hands. He nodded once. Thank you, Alexander. The kitchen was quiet for a while. Sophia cooked. The smell of coffee filled the room. Nina sat in her chair with her hands folded and did not yet know what she was supposed to do with herself, because the thing she had been doing for the last 9 hours was over and she did not know what came next. Alexander turned to her. Nina. Yes, sir. Look at me. She looked at him. You did not cry. No, sir. Even when he mentioned your mother. No, sir. Why? She thought about it. Because you asked me not to, sir. He looked at her for a long moment. Nina. Yes, sir. I want you to listen to me very carefully, because I am going to say a thing in this kitchen in front of these two people, and I am going to say it once, and then I am not going to say it again until I have earned the right to say it again. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Last night while I was sleeping, you told me you loved me. You said it where I could not answer. You said it because you thought I was going to die. I was not going to die, Nina. I was not going to die because you would not let me. So I am going to answer you now in daylight where you can hear me. Are you listening? Yes, sir. I do not know yet whether I love you. I am 42 years old, Nina, and I have not used that word in 20 years, and I do not know if the part of me that uses it is still there. But I know this. I know that when I woke up this morning, the first face I saw was yours. I know that for 9 hours of the worst night of my life, the only hand I held was yours. I know that the only person in this house this morning who walked into a room with me and did not have a calculation behind their eyes was you. So I am going to ask you something, Nina, and I want you to think about it before you answer. Do not answer me now. Answer me tomorrow. Answer me next week. Answer me in a month. Take as long as you need. Yes, sir. Stay. A pause. Sir, stay in this house. Not as my maid. Not as my employee. Stay. As whatever you decide you want to be to me. As a friend. As a partner in this strange life. As something I do not yet have a word for. Stay, Nina, and let me find out with you in daylight whether the part of me that knows that word is still there. She looked at him for a long moment. She did not need a month. She did not need a week. She did not even need to set down her hands. Yes, she said. Yes, what, Nina? Yes, I'll stay. Alexander did not smile, but the corner of his mouth, the hard mouth that Sophia had been watching for 30 years, moved the same way it had moved upstairs that morning when he had said, I know. Good, he said. Yes, sir. And Nina? Yes, sir. Stop calling me sir. She almost laughed. She did not. She just nodded. Yes, Alexander. He held out his hand across the table. She took it. Sophia at the stove set 4 plates on the counter without turning around. Marcus across the table poured 4 cups of coffee. The grandfather clock in the hallway somewhere through the wall struck 8. And Alexander Romano, who had been a man in a fevered bed 9 hours before, who had been a man without a word for that word in 20 years, who had been a man carrying a brother in a coat in the back of a car in January for 19 winters, looked across his own kitchen table at the housemaid who had refused to let him die, and he understood for the first time in his long, hard, lonely life that the strongest thing he had ever owned was not his name and not his house, and not the men who worked for him, and not the empire he had built with his own 2 hands. It was the woman sitting across from him. The woman who had whispered, I love you, into the dark of a room she did not own to a man she did not believe could hear her on a night the world had tried to take him from her. The woman who had stayed. And in the warm kitchen, over 4 plates of eggs and 4 cups of coffee, with the rain finished and the sun coming up gold over the long lawn outside the window, Nina Whitmore and Alexander Romano began quietly the only thing either of them had left to begin. The rest of their lives. Together.